Peter and Janet McBean. The Highland orphans who took their chances in Otago and built a better life for their family than they could ever have expected back in Scotland. In many cases, the origin stories of our pioneers died with them. Where did they come from? What was it that drove them to leave their homes and go all the way around the world to Otago? We often just don't know. Peter and Janet McBean, for example, were both young Highlanders who were orphaned as small children, and they must have faced a real struggle to make their way in the world. Peter was the son of a shoemaker here at Granton on Speyside, born in 1831. But after his parents' deaths, he was brought up by his grandfather at nearby Rothamurkey, and by 1841, he was living in the household of an older sister at Knockandoo. Now, opportunities for a boy like him, an orphan boy, in that time, in this place, must have been fairly limited. When Otago's dynamic immigration agent James Adams swept through this area in 1857, men from agricultural backgrounds like Peter McBean must have crammed into the hall or wherever it was that he delivered his lecture to hear what was on offer. Now, Peter must have been impressed because later that year, he travelled down to London to sail on the Gloucester, one of the immigrant ships that James Adams had organised to Otago. At voyage's end, Peter was struck down with pleurisy, but eventually recovered after treatment ashore from Dunedin doctor William Purdy. Peter subsequently went to work for the doctor, who had taken an interest in Cottesmore Station, a sheep run near Middlemarch. He then went gold prospecting here in Gabriel's Gully with no great success. He fared better when he returned to agricultural pursuits, becoming the first man to plough in the Henley area, breaking in bush and scrub-covered land. Peter's future wife, Janet Clunas, was born at Culloden, the infamous battle site here, not far from Inverness, where the last great Highland rising against the British Crown was crushed in 1746. With both her parents dead before she was 5, she was also brought up by grandparents who set her to work herding cows morning and night from the age of 9. She subsequently became a cook, working in the kitchens of some of the wealthiest people in Scotland. Janet came out to Otago as a single assisted female immigrant on the Arima in 1862. Immigrant recruitment had shifted focus after the discovery of gold the year before. Otago now needed lots of young women to balance the hordes of single men pouring into the province, and so that they could provide domestic labour for Otago's homes. Janet was already Peter's fiancée back in Scotland. They'd met while working for the same employer, but they lacked the means to get married there, so she waited behind for word from him of better prospects in Otago before coming out to join him in the colony. Now, this was very common practice among young Scottish couples at that time, the young men going ahead and checking things out before sending for their sweethearts to join them. Once in Dunedin, Janet worked for the Purdys as a domestic servant until she and Peter were married in 1863. But she stayed on Dunedin for a little while after that, while Peter went back down here to Tyree Ferry, where he was working as a ploughman, and finished building their house, where the first of their 5 children was born. Each child would be rocked in this wooden cradle with its characteristically Scottish construction, and the descendants later donated to the Toitu collection. By 1871, Peter had acquired enough capital to buy a farm of his own, a 140-acre property, a dairy farm between Henley and Tea Tree that he called the Valley of Eshcol, a biblical reference to the Promised Land, which gives you some idea of how the McBeans thought of Otago. Now, Peter played a full part in community affairs, serving on the school committee, the road board, and becoming a lay preacher in the Presbyterian Church. Janet is remembered in the family as a woman of independent spirit who took to pioneering life with great enthusiasm. They stayed in this district for 19 years before moving to Henley, where they were dairying for another 7. By then, their only son John had his own farm at Seaward Downs in Southland, and his parents retired there to live out their final years. Peter died in 1902, aged 72, and Janet 3 years later, aged 74.
They were buried back at Otago and are fine examples of those who made a go of it in pioneer Otago.